Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to Recovery Perfects, practical tools to help you follow good, orderly direction. I'm your host, Dr. Dawn-Elise Snipes. Today, we are examining Deuteronomy chapter 9, Humility and Self-Awareness. Scripture says, "Hear, Israel, you are now about to cross the Jordan to go in and dispossess nations greater and stronger than you." All right, so in recovery, this is saying, you who are about to go into recovery, hear what's getting ready to go on. You are going to get rid of these things that have tormented you for a long period of time. So, be assured today that the Lord your God is the one who goes across ahead of you like a devouring fire. He will destroy them. He will subdue them before you, and you will drive them out and annihilate them quickly as the Lord has promised you. Now remember, we're not driving out and annihilating people in today's culture. That's not acceptable. What we can do is drive the issue out of our life. We can eliminate the relationship, whether it's the relationship with a person or social media or something else. We can cut that off. We don't have to let it into our lives. Oh my gosh. When I was young, and something would be on TV that would disturb me, especially if it had something to do with an animal or something, my mother would say, "Turn it off." And it seems like a lot of people have forgotten the ability or lost the ability to do that. When something is unnecessarily causing you distress, turn it off. Back to scripture. After the Lord your God has driven them out before you, think, "The Lord has brought me here to take possession of this land because I am righteous." Yeah, no. It's due to the wickedness of these nations that God is going to drive them out before you. Everybody deserves to be loved and treated with compassion. Your love and respect for yourself and others who follow good, orderly direction will deter those who refuse to do the next right thing. The wickedness of those nations, those people or organizations or whatever, aren't going to continue to try to invest time and energy in you if you're not buying in to whatever they're selling. That's important. But it's also important to remember it's not because you're all that strong and you're all that recovered. It's because of their wickedness they're leaving. If they stick around for long enough, they may be a temptation for you. Saul and Solomon both became very prominent leaders in the Old Testament, but then chose to follow their impulses and urges instead of good, orderly direction, and they lost everything. Those who are consumed with pride, selfishness, and suspicion are vulnerable. Think about a lot of the people that are big business owners, are celebrities. Think about what it's like to live in their world where they're always worried about being one-upped, where they are filled with pride. I mean, a lot of people look to them, adore them, idolize them. And that can make them very vulnerable to a fall because they're building themselves up on this very weak foundation. Matthew 12:25-26, Jesus said to them, "Every kingdom divided against itself will be ruined, and every city or household divided against itself will not stand. If Satan drives out Satan, he is divided against himself. How then can this kingdom stand?" The people who profess to be your best friend, to want you to have the best things, but then do the wrong thing, they are not your friends. And they eventually, because they have to be suspicious, because they're not following good, orderly direction, they will eventually sort of destroy one another. Proverbs 16:18. Pride goes before destruction and the haughty spirit before a fall. When we start becoming too proud in our own skin, thinking that we've got this licked or we can do this, nobody else can do it, but we can do it, becoming suspicious of others, not using prudence or respect or truthfulness, we become very vulnerable to a fall. And that also will start isolating us from the people who could, number one, support us in what we're doing, and number two, who could maybe help enlighten us. Sometimes we have blind spots. We don't see things 100%. And the people who are around us that follow good, orderly direction may be able to say, not going to tell you what to do, but I want you to consider that this might not be exactly what you think it is. How helpful is that? When people point out things that you didn't see or you weren't aware of to keep you from falling. Luke 18:9-14. Jesus told this parable to someone who trusted to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and treated others with contempt. 2 men went up into the temple to pray, one a Pharisee, the other a tax collector. Now remember, back in the Old Testament, both the Pharisees and the tax collectors weren't really looked upon too fondly. The Pharisee, standing by himself, prayed, God, I thank you that I am not like the other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I get. That's wonderful. If that's true, the Pharisee is focusing on everything that he's doing right and ignoring everything that he's doing wrong. How do we see that in recovery? We see people who tell us about all the things they're doing right, but not what they're doing wrong. The tax collector wouldn't even lift up his eyes to heaven, but said, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. So the tax collector selflessly recognized that, number one, actions without love are meaningless. I may do a lot of good things, but that doesn't mean that I'm perfect. And if I'm not doing them for the right reasons, then they're kind of useless anyway. Instead of seeking praise for all he was doing right, he sought compassion for what he had done wrong. In recovery, this is so important to remain mindful of, yes, what we're doing right. That's important to see our growth, but also of our vulnerabilities and what mistakes we may have made so we can learn from them, not so we can punish ourselves for them, but so we can learn from them so they don't become relapse traps. Thinking right now, are you more a Pharisee, talking about all the good stuff that you do and ignoring all the stuff that is wrong? Or are you the tax collector that asks for compassion and support to do better tomorrow? Please like, share, and subscribe.